Welcome to The Route to Success, where you learn how leaders build resilience, strengthen their mindset, and move forward with clarity. Today's episode is focused on one core idea. Your mindset drives everything, your decisions, your performance, your results. Our guest, Chris Harris, spent 25 years training military special forces in both combat and mindset. He later transitioned into corporate leadership, applying those same principles to rise quickly into a company president role. Now, through his work with the Warrior Maker, he teaches people how to understand and change the operating system behind their thoughts and actions and subconscious mind. This conversation will give you a clear breakdown of what mindset is, why it matters, and how you can start changing today. But first, let's welcome Chris. Chris, thank you so much for being here today.
I'm excited to have this conversation, Sarah.
Wonderful. All right, let's start with your journey. And I have to admit, I have lived outside of military installations in Oklahoma for probably 14 years. And I have never met somebody who trains special forces. So I'm already in awe. So you spent 25 years training special forces and then made a major shift into corporate leadership. What did that transition teach you about mindset and resilience?
Well, I had to overcome the part that nobody wants to talk about, which is depression. Anytime there's a major identity shift in our life, and, identity shifts happen many times throughout our life. We get married, we get divorced, we have a child, we lose a loved one. We get our dream job, we retire or lose our dream job. And these identity shifts oftentimes come with depression. And so, as a private contractor for 25 years, I had my dream job, and I never really imagined Sarah doing anything other than training elite warriors. I believed that my purpose here on earth was to protect the innocent and safeguard the helpless. And one day I woke up and I realized I was too old physically to be training these young elite warriors at the level that I was. And I had to decide what I was going to do with the rest of my life professionally. And I wasn't ready to let go. I wasn't ready to move on. But I had lost my response rate, my heal rate, all of the things that are critical when you're dealing in a world that is measured in microseconds. And so I made the decision that I was going to pivot into corporate America. And it was a very challenging time for me because I really didn't want to stop doing what I was doing, but physically I couldn't do it any longer. And so, you go through the season where you kind of feel sorry for yourself, and you get advice from people who are feeding the wrong things. And but we do what we do. We get over it, and we get over ourselves, and we soldier on.
I love how you said that. And first of all, let me thank you for being so courageous to use the word depression, because most people don't want to admit that. I was having a deep conversation with myself this morning about mental health and how everybody struggles with mental health, and it's normal and we need to normalize it, because I get embarrassed sometimes about my mental health. And I have been in those transition periods similar to yours where it feels like you gave up a dream, something ended, and it is deep depression. You're so right. And you either get the stop feeling sorry for yourself, get over yourself. That's what I got. Nothing ended. You're being ridiculous. Or you get the it's okay, it's okay. But rarely do you hear somebody like you come up and say, you know what, this sucks. This is really hard. But I can tell you what, it's going to be okay, and I'll walk with you. And I love that that's the message that you're giving to people, because we all need somebody to walk alongside us.
And I would add one more caveat to that, Sarah. I never came to the place to where I squared myself in the eye in the mirror and said, it's going to be okay. What I said, what became my daily affirmation is, maybe it won't be okay, but I'm going to be okay.
Oh, that's so much better. Maybe it won't be okay, but I'm going to be okay. That's so powerful. So powerful. Okay, so talking about that, building off, it might not be okay, but I'm going to be okay. You often say mindset is the foundation of performance and success. For someone hearing this for the first time, could you just tell them what mindset is and kind of give that baseline definition so we can, as we move forward in the conversation, people can keep up with us?
Think about throughout the course of the day, how many times a stimulus is delivered to us. Okay. Somebody says something a little off color or a little judgmental. The alarm clock goes off about 3 minutes after you finally fell asleep after struggling with sleeping all night. Well, those are stimuluses. And the space between when the stimulus occurs and the response or reaction that we choose, that space between those two variables is mindset.
Got it. Got it. So a lot of people confuse mindset, beliefs, and attitudes. Can you break down the difference in a simple way so people can understand it clearly?
Yeah, I believe that our mindset needs to be in alignment with our beliefs and our attitudes. So, in other words, we don't want to work hard to develop a mindset that does not align with our core values. We don't want to work hard to develop a mindset that does not align with, for my example, I've been married for 30 years. I want to make sure that I'm not developing a mindset that is not aligned with my wife's future goals, and some of the things that are important to her values. So if I'm over here developing this mindset because I want to control or master the space between stimulus and response, but I'm doing it in a way to where it does not align with that of my employer, my spouse, my children, my closest friends, well, I'm going to have a problem. So we have to be very clear about what our beliefs and our attitudes and our values are before we basically use the formula for recreating or strengthening or developing new neural pathways, which is our mindset. Our mindset does not live in our conscious mind. It lives outside of our conscious mind, in our subconscious. And so we have the ability to retrain, redevelop, recreate, strengthen our mindset, which lives in that subconscious realm, which is outside the conscious. A lot of people believe the subconscious mind is below the conscious mind. That's not true. It's outside the conscious mind, whatever that means. And so we have to be very clear about what our beliefs and attitudes, even limiting beliefs, biases, we have to be very clear about what they are before we start developing or retraining a new mindset. And the only reason we would create a new mindset is we would want a mindset that is in alignment with our new goals that leads to our future best self. So can you imagine the friction that you're creating internally if you're creating a mindset that will help you achieve a new goal, but that mindset that you're developing is completely out of alignment with your values, your faith, your character? You're just going to create friction in your life, and things will be worse than they were before.
Yeah, it feels like I'm a very visual person. And so what it sounds like to me, what I'm visualizing is if your mindset's out of alignment with your character, your beliefs, and your attitudes, it's like it's like when your brake pads wear away and you hear that squeaking and it just causes that friction and it kind of smoke comes out. That's what I see, is just a smoking mess. And when things are in alignment, everything just flows kind of like a stream is my mental image of what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
So you talk about mindset set as our operating system. Why is this important and how does it affect how we show up every day?
Well, first and foremost, if you don't get it right, you won't show up every day. The fact that when we have a resilient mindset that is aligned with our values and our integrity and aligned with our goals, that's what ensures that we show up every day. And I don't mean showing up physically. I mean showing up heart, mind, and spirit. You know, there's a fine line, Sarah, between living and existing. I'm not looking to exist. I'm not looking to make it till the end of the day. I'm looking to live with gratitude. I'm looking to embrace every moment. I don't wake up thinking, oh my gosh, I got one more day. I look up and say, you know what? One less day. What am I going to do with it? And so I think the fact that we want to show up, and we want to show up giving the best version of ourselves. People who don't have their mindset dialed in rarely show up.
So
Have you ever went and had dinner with someone who was close to you, and you were really looking forward to quality time, and the whole time they're a million miles away?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
such a
that's not
struggle.
showing up.
Right.
Put your phone down. That's showing up.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for saying that. Yes, put your phone down, focus on the person right in front of you. That is, I think, a skill that we're missing. So, since you brought it up, I know it wasn't one of our pre questions, but I have to ask, how do you think our constant reliance on our phones and digital devices technology is affecting mindset?
Well, I think it's dangerous. I think it's a thief. It's a thief that we have invited into our living room and ask it to make itself comfortable. I think what we're surrendering in the name of convenience is quality of life. Cell phones and computers and media, they serve a purpose, and there are some value in them. But what's the saying? Everything in moderation, including moderation.
Yep.
And I believe that we took something that was meant to be a useful tool, and we've abused it. And it's no different than abusing food or alcohol or anything else. Too much of a good thing is a bad thing. And I've almost gotten to the point where I don't like to go out to dinner. Because it grieves me to see a family of four sitting at a table, paying $100 for a meal, and everyone at that table is on their phone.
Yep.
Like you've missed the point.
Yeah. The last time my daughter and I went out to dinner, the last couple times, we noticed that, because we make it a point if we go out, we make it a point to put our phone down. Unless sometimes we pull it out because maybe we talked about, oh, tomorrow, do you want to go to the state fair? Let's see if it's open. But we try to make it where it's just that. And then we put our phone down and then it's conversation. But the last time I remember sitting at the table with her and just feeling this heaviness. And I was like, what is going on? We're talking. This is a good time. And I looked around and there were maybe 3 other couples around us. And all of them were staring at their phones, not talking to each other. And it just felt so heavy, even though it wasn't us,
Yeah, I feel the same way when I get on an airplane to fly on an international trip, and the person who sits next to me is wearing pajamas. We've missed something.
Yeah. 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 No, you're so right. You're so right. I think it's some of those basics. I have rules, and so I'm curious if you do, about my cell phone and my usage of it. Of course, during work, it has to be out, right? But at the end of the day, when I'm done working, I actually leave my phone on my desk. When I take my breaks and go outside and walk my dogs, I leave my phone at home.
Hmm.
And I know that could be seen as a safety issue. I get it. But I choose to leave it at home and take that risk of a safety issue, because otherwise, my watch is dinging, somebody's emailing me, and I'm not focused on the walk. I'm not present. And then what was the whole point of taking that walk?
But it's not a safety issue. And the world has convinced us that it's a safety issue, but for us to believe that that's a safety issue, then that really becomes what we call an irrational fear. Because an irrational fear is a fear that basically has a low likelihood of happening. It's something that has a low probability. So thinking that if I don't take my phone with me when I walk my dog, what happens if, there's an emergency and I need to call a friend or 911 and now I can't? Well, statistically, that does not hold up.
Right.
So that means it's an irrational fear. And if it's an irrational fear, it's probably closer to a justification.
Yeah. And see, I never thought of it or think of it that way. I just had friends say to me, "Oh, aren't you scared?" And I'm like, "No, don't you remember when we were in late 90s, in early 2000s, we were in our 20s, we would drive hundreds of miles to go see a concert and we never had a cell phone with us and we were perfectly fine."
I know lots of homeless people. I go out of my way to introduce myself to them, ask them their name, ask them how they're doing. Anytime I see someone that I know is homeless who lives in my community, not necessarily my community, but definitely my city, I go out of my way to just greet them and call them by their name. They don't carry cell phones,
No. And they're doing okay, aren't they?
and they're doing
Well,
okay.
I let me say that sounded very cruel of me. I don't mean that. They are homeless. I don't want to overlook that. But a lot of them sometimes I think are happier than the rest of us because they don't have that cell phone, right? They've are finding their way. They're discovering their way. I'm going to stop there because I don't want to say something inappropriate. I hope you understand what I'm trying
Yeah,
to
sure,
say.
absolutely. Well,
Okay,
I
so
can say it because I used to be homeless, so I'm qualified to speak on the subject, and then people can throw stones at me all day long.
you're right. You're right. And I have never been homeless. But I don't judge. I think that's the biggest thing is I don't judge. I look at a homeless person and I see kindness. Sometimes I wonder how we failed them as a community, but that's usually the only question that ever comes through me. I'm not scared of them. I'm always like, why are you scared of them?
Hmm.
They're just people having a bad day.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, and something has failed. Either
yes,
we have failed them, society has failed them, or they have failed themselves.
true, true. And I
I
think
mean, the bottom line is there's some people who just don't want to work.
that is correct. Yes. Yes. And I think my greatest frustration comes with the lack of resources in the communities that I'll be in, where, it'd be
Hmm.
hot, middle of summer. And I'm like, why is there not a day center? Why isn't there a place where they can go and get out of this heat, or in the winter? And so my frustration isn't at the homeless people, it's at the situation that we're not meeting their needs.
Hmm. Yeah, and my heart goes even extra deep if it's a veteran, because I just have such a
Yeah.
heart for veterans, people who have served in the military to protect our great nation, and now they're absent of the basic essentials of survival. And so, and again, I don't judge, because there's a lot of different factors as to how this led to this, but I try to look at it without judgment and with a heart of compassion. And that's when I see homeless people on the streets, my knee-jerk reaction is not judgment. It's, what can we do to help?
Yes. Yes. That's exactly what I always think too. You're right. You're right. Okay. And that's a mindset, isn't it?
It is, and mindset is a choice.
Right. To either see solutions and ask questions to get to solutions or see the problems.
The space between the stimulus and the reaction.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So at this point, someone listening is likely thinking, I understand this matters, but how do I change it? So, what is that first step to actually shifting your mindset? What is that first step to take?
Well, I think the first thing that anyone has to do is, um, with any change, and it doesn't matter what we're talking about, whether it be physically, spiritually, mentally, um, all positive change begins with awareness. And once we cross the hurdle of awareness, and that's where we basically come to the conclusion that something needs to change here. This is not working. And then we have to move into acceptance. So we become aware of the fact that what needs to change, and then we accept the fact that these are the consequences if it doesn't change. And so therefore I'm going to change it. So awareness, then acceptance. And once we get past those two kind of core fundamental common denominators of any positive change, we then need understanding. So if you take a look at the subconscious mind, which is driving about 95% of your decisions, your words, your actions, your thoughts, about 95% of all of that is coming from the subconscious portion of your operating system. And we have to understand that first and foremost, it does not like change. It resists change, and it resists change to the point to where it will try to sabotage you and your day and your goals and your joy, because it views change as a bad thing. So understand that if you're going to try to make positive improvements to your subconscious mind, you are going to be met with a lot of resistance. Okay. And the reason is because we have something living in the brain called, it's called the critical faculty. And I just call him Critical Carl. And imagine Critical Carl is this 7 foot tall, 400-pound, muscular, very well built bouncer. And his job is he stands at the door to the subconscious mind. And his job is not to let anything or anyone through. Okay. And he would be the equivalent, Sarah, to a mental firewall. Okay. His job is to protect you from anything that is new or unfamiliar, because new and or unfamiliar leads to danger. It leads to safety concerns and all. Like what happens if I go on a walk and I don't take my phone? Well, that's Critical Carl, right? That's at the door, that's telling you, you should really take your phone. And you always take your phone. Not taking your phone that's unfamiliar. You're breaking the routine here. And so we have to figure out, how do we get past Critical Carl, who's standing on the other side of the red velvet ropes, and he's not letting any new thoughts or ideas pass. It's his job not to allow anything past. And so the first thing we do is we try to get past Critical Carl with a fake ID, and that, that's our positive self-talk and our positive, visual imagery. And, I'm doing NLP now. And in fact, I meditated for 5 minutes this morning. And, those are fake IDs to Critical Carl, because if they're not repetitive, he ain't buying it. Right? You can't just make a couple of positive changes this week and say, you know what, I'm no longer going to use the word can't. I'm only going to say things that are positive affirmations. Well, those are fake IDs to Carl, because they don't align with what's really going on in your subconscious. So therefore, he's not buying it. So what Critical Carl loves is he loves repetition, and he loves visual imagery that is fueled with emotion and feeling. These are the things that he buys as truth. And so if we want to basically create a brand new neural pathway, which is either breaking an old destructive habit or creating a new productive habit, what we're really trying to do is create a new neural pathway. And to do that, we got to get past the 7-foot Critical Carl, the critical faculty, which in simple terms, Sarah, it's our analytical mind. Our analytical mind is what's blocking us from getting into the subconscious and making meaningful and lasting change. So the first thing we have to do is we have to have repetition. All right, that's what the subconscious mind loves. So there's a lot of positive ways that are very effective at changing the subconscious mind, but the problem is they lack the core ingredient, which is repetition. So, for example, there's been some brilliant pioneers in the past about changing the subconscious mind, and one of the things that they agree with is hypnosis is a powerful tool, and meditation is a powerful tool, and NLP, neuro-linguistics programming, basically changing the way that you speak, right? That these are all powerful tools. And the reason that they say hypnosis is a powerful tool is because imagine Critical Carl, every once in a while, he takes a break, right? He goes and takes a smoke break or a bathroom break or gets a sandwich, whatever he does. Well, that means that there's no one manning the door. So that would be those moments just before you fall asleep. All right. You've laid down with the intention of going to bed and going to sleep. And when you do that, your theta waves are very strong. Okay. And you're not really asleep and you're not really awake, but this is, if your theta waves are strong, critical Carl's not at the door. So the subconscious mind is extremely impressionable. And that would be a great time to introduce new, a highly emotionally charged with a lot of feeling, visual imagery. But the problem is, how many times do we go to bed with the intent of going to sleep, in the course of a 24-hour day? It's a couple of times at most. So what we're really missing there is we're missing the repetition. Secondly, there's just a whole lot of people that I know who would never subject themselves to hypnosis. They have a negative bias about it. They don't fully understand it. They don't trust it. They only know what they've seen on TV or what they've read in an article. And so there's a lot of people that have a negative bias toward intentionally being hypnotized. So you've got that. Well, another thing we can do is meditation. Meditation puts us in a theta mindset to where critical Carl's not really manning the door and the subconscious mind is very open to new thoughts and ideas. But again, even if you meditated daily, it's not going to have the repetition. We need a lot of repetition to change the subconscious mind. So one of the things that I created years ago, I call it the MetaCue method, METACUE. And what it does is it gives us all of the required elements to change the subconscious mind. It gives us repetition. It gives us the theta brain waves. It gives us the, what would we call it? The highly emotionally charged visualization. So what I would do is I would tell you, if you wanted to create a new habit or destroy an old destructive habit, okay, something that's just standing between you and what it is you want to accomplish, I would say the first thing you need to do is you need to create a future memory. And it usually needs to be about 5 seconds long, but it needs to be visual and it needs to have some emotional charge to it. So what you would do, let's just say you set this goal and your goal was, and I'm just going to make something up, okay? But let's say your goal was you're in sales for a large company and you want to become number one in the world selling that product for that company. And I use this story because I worked for a company. I was in sales, and they made the prize for that year. The manufacturer said, whoever is number one in the world selling this very expensive technology, at the end of the year, when we have our annual sales award ceremony in San Diego, it was going to be that year, the winner is going to get the keys to a brand new convertible Porsche. Okay. Now, keep in mind, I was selling technology that was very expensive, right? So my wife has always wanted a Porsche. So, so I create this 5-second future memory of my wife driving down our street on a beautiful sunny afternoon with the top down, and she's smiling and she's wearing her designer sunglasses and she's got her scarf on and the wind is blowing through her hair, and and I wave at her as she drives by, and it's 5 seconds, but it's very emotionally charged. There's a lot of feeling in that. But one of the requirements for this future memory 5-second video clip is it has to be something that only would be happening if you had achieved the goal. Well, unless I became number one in the world and won the keys to that Porsche, my wife would not be driving down the street in that beautiful Porsche. So the fact that she's in that Porsche driving down our street means that I accomplished number one in the world. So if your goal was to, go back to college and get your bachelor's degree, and so your 5-second visualization is you standing on the stage as the dean of that college or university is handing you your degree and you're shaking his or her hand. Well, that's a future memory that would only be taking place if you had accomplished that goal. And so it makes it emotionally charged. And you're watching yourself as a third-party observer. You're standing off the side watching yourself do this. So that's very powerful. So and then anytime you see yourself, anytime you play that 5-second video, okay, that future memory, it's very important that you verbally speak what I call a gratitude statement. Because when we use gratitude as a tool, our subconscious mind makes the assumption that if we're saying we're grateful for something, it makes the assumption that it's already happened. Okay. Our subconscious mind takes us literally. It doesn't know future, past, present. It doesn't know the difference between fantasy, reality, lie, truth. It takes us very literally. So when I play that 5-second video and then I say, I am so grateful that my wife is able to enjoy her dream car. Well, my subconscious mind assumes that has happened. And so I play the video and I make the gratitude statement. So I've got this emotionally charged, highly visualized, feelings, all the things that Critical Carl is like ushering to the back room, right? Here you go. We've got a seat saved for you. The only thing we're lacking now is repetition. And this is why I call it meta cue. So what you do is you create the cue. And if you want to get this new habit formed immediately, pick a cue of something that happens a lot. If you are fine with it taking a few weeks or a few months, pick a cue that doesn't happen a lot. So for me, if I want something to happen right now, like I want to really create a brand new neural pathway, then I'll choose the cue of every time I check my phone, because the average American checks their phone over 100 times a day. Okay, so that's the cue. So now, every time I check my phone, there's the cue. I immediately play my 5-second future memory of my wife driving down the road in that beautiful Porsche with the wind blowing in her hair. And under my breath, I say, I'm so grateful that my wife gets to enjoy her dream car. And all of a sudden, I'm now doing this 100 times a day on average. Well, there's all the repetition you could ever ask for. And then what happens is my subconscious mind begins to accept this as truth. And so what happens is my subconscious mind starts supporting thoughts and behaviors that lead me to that success. And it starts reminding me, like alarms going off, of thoughts and behaviors that are opposing to me achieving that. And all of a sudden, basically, your subconscious mind wants to give you what it is convinced that you want. And so that's the MetaQ method. And I've used it for years, and it is very powerful. And there's not too many goals I've set that I have not achieved utilizing that method. Now, it requires discipline. But there's one more beautiful thing about the MetaQ method. The highest form of intelligence, I personally believe this. A lot of neuroscientists believe this. I don't know that there's a case study that can prove this, but a lot of neuroscientists believe that the highest form of intelligence is something called metacognition. Mm-hmm. And it's basically mastering the art of thinking about what you're thinking. It's awareness on a whole new level.
Right.
Well, think about this. If I tell myself every time I look at my phone, I'm going to play my 5-second video and I'm going to make my statement, my gratitude statement, is that not just stopping me dead in my tracks and forcing me to think about what I'm thinking?
It is.
It's strengthening one of the most invaluable muscles that we have, which is the ability to stop and interrupt automated processing. You're interrupting it and thinking about what you're thinking, and you're doing it 100 times a day. And now, so what's happening is I'm becoming this master at interrupting my own thinking and thinking about what I'm thinking. And so there's so many wonderful things that all just come together beautifully with this MetaQ method. Now you can say, well, I don't want to do it 100 times a day. Okay, well, just say every time I sit or stand, every time I walk through a doorway, anytime I open or close something. It can be something that's a lot less frequent.
I love how it's so simple and attached to the things you already do during the day and things you do without thinking. So you can continue to do them while you're thinking about thinking.
Anytime I take a drink of water.
Oh yeah, that would be dangerous for me. I drink water all day. That would be amazing if I did that every time. I can see what you're saying. Okay. Okay. Um, so in addition to this MetaQ, do you have any other tools that people can use today to start influencing their subconscious and building a stronger mindset?
Well, first and foremost, your environment.
True.
And your environment is going to be controlled by how well you set and establish and protect boundaries. When we talk about the importance of environment, what we're really talking about is, do you have the wherewithal to establish and protect a boundary? Because if you don't, you're never going to have the environment you need for growth.
I would say boundaries for me personally is one of the hardest struggles I deal with daily, but I'm very aware of that. And so I actively work towards it and make myself face them. But it took a long time to get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't, you're not going to create the new version of yourself without strong boundaries.
Yeah.
Because you have to have the environment that is conducive to where the person you're trying to become. And you can't do that with your existing environment. Your existing environment is not going to lead you to where you want to go.
Isn't
And
it?
and look, I would say this. One of my favorite quotes, British philosopher Alan Watts. I believe he passed away in the 70s, but his work is still very prolific online if you want to look him up. And but one of my favorite quotes is from him. He said, "You are under no obligation to remain the same version of yourself you were 5 minutes ago."
I love that quote. I love that. And I love that it gives you permission to start over again every 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
That's so powerful. I love the I don't think it's a quote, I think it's a saying, but it's you can't get healthy in the environment you got sick in.
I love that. Mm-hmm. That's actually a famous Stoic, and I forget his name, but it absolutely. Another one of my favorite quotes is, because I do so much work with the subconscious mind, because I believe that's where mindset lives. It's a quote from Carl Jung, famous philosopher, but he said, "Until you can learn to make your subconscious mind conscious," he said, "it will control your life and you will continue to call it fate."
Yeah, no, so true. So true. I'll tell you one of the biggest changes I made in changing my environment, and it's going to sound really simple, is I left social media because I realized how much I was showing myself, which was against boundaries of privacy for me, but also how much I was comparing myself to others, driving the need to constantly shop, to be perfect, to be this. And when I pulled away, and it's been over 3 years now, and let me tell you, I get strange looks, especially like I was in a business meeting the other day for a grant that I'm writing. And they said, well, here you go to Facebook and get all this information. And I was like, you know what? I'm not on Facebook for personal reasons. And you could have heard pins drop everywhere and people just looking at me like I'm crazy. And I just kept going. And I was like, my mental health is very important to me and Facebook isn't. If you can
I
send
love
me
it.
that article or screenshots, however you can get that to me, I'll read it, but I'm not going to access any social media for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I do look at, what I do surround myself with, I'm very conscious to make very positive. To always be putting positivity in my head and things that feed my soul and my creativity and nothing but dark. And those two changes over the last 3 years have led to incredible growth, have given me the strength to face, I'm going to call them my demons. I'm sure you have a better word for that, and overcome them and get to a place where I can use the word yet. I don't know how to do that yet, but I'm going to learn. And to take those moments of separation, like I don't need to have my phone with me all the time. I can go outside with my dog and just enjoy the sun. And
Mm-hmm.
they're little things, and I feel you'll get this. The joy and the peace inside of me, I wouldn't trade for anything.
Mm-hmm. All of that is a form of you establishing boundaries to protect your environment.
Yeah.
And you getting on Facebook and scrolling and micro learning and all the things they call it now. That's a violation of these boundaries that you have established and created to protect your environment. So it's really you're not on social media because it's not conducive to the life that you're building yourself toward. It's actually
Exactly.
counterproductive.
Exactly. Exactly. This year for the first
If
time ever.
if I'm on a diet, trying to eat healthier and trying to lose some weight,
Oh yeah.
I'm not going to. I don't need to be stopping at Bucky's every 30 miles.
Right. Or have the snacks in the house.
Yeah.
I've got to be like, it's like, you got to go to the store. No, I can't keep them in the house. But, that time has allowed me to develop new skills. And, for the first time ever, I'm growing tomatoes. I know it sounds silly, but I can't express to you the joy I can get when I go outside after work and water my tomatoes and see them growing.
Nothing silly about that.
So there are tools to take, there are steps to take. I'm a huge believer in being outside and in nature. I think that really calms your spirit and allows you to think about thinking. But I think that's going to be different for everybody. So,
Sarah, I read a study a few days ago, and it blew me away. And I don't even know where I read it, but it talked about, and there's like real data that supports this now, but that if for just 1 minute every day, if you go outdoors and you just put your hand on a tree and just touch the tree, don't have to say anything, don't have to think anything, just literally take your hand and put your hand on the bark of that tree, just kind of touch the limbs, the branch, the leaves for 1 minute a day. And it got into the benefits, the health and the spiritual and the mental benefits of, I mean, I won't walk by a tree now without touching that tree. It was such a compelling study.
believe it. I believe it. When I started going outside between meetings and embracing the sunshine and laughing with my dogs, sitting in the grass with them, it made all the difference. And I have to say, not only has it made me a better person, it's made me a better business owner, a better professional. It's made me more confident and more calm and have the ability to not cave when I'm the only person in the room without social media. And I'm like, I don't think social media is evil. I don't think it's bad. It's just not for me. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's that grounding and getting back to nature and growing things and getting a little dirt on me that makes everything I do better.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you get it. And I know you get the subconscious. And it's just like a minute for me to calm. And it might even have something to do with my ADHD, just having something like that. It can calm me and my brain actually stops. And it's a beautiful thing. Beautiful. So, okay, Chris, I always save what I think is the hardest question for last. For someone who feels stuck, overwhelmed, or reactive, what is one simple action they can take to regain control and start moving forward?
Well, I think the first thing that I would ask a person is, why is it important to you that you're in control? I think we overemphasize the importance of being in control. Look, I don't want to be out of control. I want to be very mindful, and I want to take ownership of my decisions, my actions, my reactions, my responses. But for me, probably some of the greatest peace that I've ever enjoyed in my life was when I decided I don't need to be in control.
Yes.
I don't.
Go. It's true.
And I would tell people this. I would say, look, focus on the things that you have power over. Focus on the things you have control over. And here's one of them. I would say, never withhold love if it's within your power to give it. All right, so there's an area you have control in. Leverage that. Never withhold love if it's within your power to give it. If you want to be in control of something, be in control of something that can have a profound and lasting impact on everyone in the space that you're breathing in.
So true. So true. So, Chris, if people want to get in touch with you, they want to talk to you, have a coaching session with you, hear you speak, what is the best way to be in touch with you?
Thank you for asking that. thewarriormaker.com.
I would encourage you to reach out. Chris has been incredible. I've gotten to speak to him twice now, and I've always walked away with a lot to think about, very positive things to think about. And I think, Chris, you've always pushed me to grow. I don't even think you've been aware of it, but you give me things to think about and you give me areas. Now I have to go touch a tree. This is my new obsession today. I have to go touch a tree. And I love how you gave such clear examples of what mindset is and helped me understand that meta cue that I am going to attach to drinking water. I love that. They're very simple, very practical tools. So I think if you're looking for somebody with compassion, if you're looking for somebody who honestly has probably been there, done that, and isn't going to judge you, Chris is the person to work with, right? So reach out, hear him speak, see what's going on, and learn that you can change how you think. And Chris, I always say this to every guest that's on the show. If there's ever anything I can do for you, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm always here to support, and I will always be cheering you on.
Just, put some positive thoughts toward me. I did not know I had a brain tumor, and out of nowhere, I thought I was in very good health, and out of nowhere, a few weeks ago, I had a seizure
Oh my
and
gosh.
got rushed to the emergency room. They did an MRI. They found a very large tumor. 6 hours of surgery. They removed it, and and for me, the number one thing that goes through my mind through all of that, I'm fine. I had 20 staples in the back of my head, and they've already taken those out, and I like kind of rubbing the scar, and every time I touch the scar, it's a new perspective. I get to wear this scar for the rest of my life, and every time I touch it, I get to choose what it reminds me of. And what it reminds me of is that I didn't die, and that I was given another day, and my wife is not a widow. And so every time I touch that scar, I get to choose. It's a meta-cue for me, and I get to choose what I want that to remind me of. That scar is proof that wounds have healed. And so, if you've got a scar, if you walk with a limp, if you've got a disability, whatever it is, you can choose whatever meaning you want to associate with that. If we can let our minds exaggerate worst case scenario, we also have the power to allow our minds to exaggerate best case scenario. And so I have chosen best case scenario every time I reach back and I touch this 4-inch scar. Best case scenario, every time I touch it, I'm going to think of something wonderful and beautiful to concentrate on.
I
That's
love
a
that.
superpower.
It is. I want you to know, after you told me before, I've been picturing nothing but positive, gold glowing energy circling your head, just healing you, because I think you still have, I don't think, I know you still have a lot to do. I know your mission isn't completed yet. And so I appreciate the time that I've had with you and your being candid and vulnerable, and your patience with me, because sometimes I need a lot of patience, and I always feel like I get that from you. And so I appreciate that. So thank you, Chris, so much for being here today.
My pleasure.